Hey guys, it's Erica again. I don't have OCD. I'm making videos though for the families and loved ones of those who are going through OCD recovery, those who have OCD. This is more for the support side. And today I wanted to talk about my journey with Nick. Nick has somatic OCD, so I can speak more to my experience with that. I don't know a whole lot about the other types of OCD, but I did want to talk about our journey and the fact that the recovery process is unfortunately not a quick fix. So, with regards to Nick's OCD, it actually started with tinnitus, however you want to pronounce it. So, ringing in his ears. So, that started the summer of 2019. We had been married for about 4 months when this started. So, um, he started developing tinnitus. He just had this buzzing that would not go away, and it was really annoying him. He ended up buying this book called Rewiring Tinnitus, which really, really helped him. And he actually was able to habituate to it. And right after he finished habituating to it, where it wasn't bothering him anymore, he had this thought of what are some other things that we habituate to, and it was blinking that came to his mind. And as he thought about blinking, he actually had a panic attack, and that's kind of how his OCD started. So his somatic OCD is more along the lines of blinking and saliva. Those are his two biggest themes, I guess I think they're called. So he couldn't stop thinking about his blinking, and then that started to really upset him and give him anxiety and think, I'm never going to be normal again. And that's kind of, from what I understand, a typical journey with somebody with OCD is that, or somatic OCD in particular, is that they get afraid that they're never going to stop thinking about this thing, this very neutral thing that all humans do, whether it's heart rate, breathing, blinking, saliva, things like that. So that was kind of how all of that started. And initially, we didn't know what was going on. I had never heard of anything like this. Unfortunately, I wasn't the greatest at receiving it because I was kind of like, I've never heard of anything like that. Can you just think of other things? Which, now that we know that it's OCD, that's not something that they can just turn off. They have to do work to get through the recovery. It's not just a process of try distracting yourself and thinking about other things. That's not how it works. So that was the summer of 2019, and now having been through this process, we also understand that it's been almost a year and a half now that Nick has been going through this. Some cases, they don't even learn that recovery is possible until 10 years into it. And the first step is recognizing that that is possible, which is helpful. This channel is super helpful for that. So that's kind of first step. The second step is even harder, is figuring out how to go through recovery and committing to it. And that, I would say that the commitment to it for Nick was the hardest, because the commitment meant not giving in to his avoidances and his compulsions, which I had spoken about in a previous video, what those were. It meant that he had to actually learn to sit with the anxiety and learn how to cope with that, and do all of the things that other videos on this channel have helped with what he needs to go through, all of the steps and all of the books and the readings, and it's a lot of work. And so it took him, I want to say 8 or 9 months to actually fully commit to his recovery. He started, I think it's May 1st of 2020. So from June of 2019, almost a year, until May of 2020, he was doing a lot of compulsions, a lot of avoidance. His anxiety was really, really bad. His whole life was disrupted. He went to some very dark places, and going along on that ride with him was very dark for myself and very lonely as well. Um, but within those months, Nick had done a lot of, I call it the roller coaster, where he knew about recovery and he had an idea of what he needed to do with recovery, um, but it was very cyclical, where he would say, his biggest avoidance was video games, and I would say the second biggest one was sleeping. So he would go through phases of, I don't want to play video games, I'm not playing video games, I'm done with playing video games, and then he would start to play them again, or I need to get out of bed, I'm going and I'm doing all the healthy things, I'm going to the gym, I'm getting up early, and that wouldn't last very long either. So the commitment to it was the hardest thing for Nick to do. Um, Eventually, he did come to that conclusion of, I need to get rid of the video games altogether and not have them in the house, which was a really big step for him. Um, but again, it's not a quick fix. He had to come to these conclusions on his own, which was very tiring and frustrating for me. Um, I remember there were nights, many nights, where I would be sleeping and he would be waking me up saying, I'm so anxious, I can't sleep, blah, 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 and, start catastrophizing and not want to put up with any of this anymore. So the first part, I would say, of committing to the recovery and learning how to sit with the anxiety and realize that just because he's anxious doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be that way forever if he puts in the work. That was probably the biggest thing for him. It's not a quick fix, and unfortunately, as the supporters, we can't speed up the process at all. I know I've spoken in my older videos, that you can't do this for them, and I'm going to say that probably in every video that I make, because it's hard when somebody is going through something so debilitating to not do something to help. It's not that you don't want to do something to help it, obviously you do, but to take a step back and understand that you can't do it for them. So depending on the person, I was, very lucky that Nick committed to his recovery about a year in, but some people, it might take them longer. And you need to do things in the meantime for yourself to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because otherwise you can just be pulled in down this dark hole that sometimes they can get into if you're not careful about it. And you don't want to necessarily be doing that for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, because that's not healthy for you either. And you don't have the OCD. So I wish I could say that there's a way to speed the process up, but ultimately it comes back on them. There's really not a whole lot that you can do other than just accept the fact that this might take a long time. And you might go through that cycle that I went through with Nick, where it's like, okay, for a week, he's doing great. Oh my gosh, finally, there's this like relief that I felt. And then I would get really frustrated when he would go back to his old habits, when he wasn't taking care of himself, when he started going back down that rabbit hole of, I'm never going to get better, and this is just going to be the way it is. Let's get a divorce, because that was something that he would say quite often. And obviously that's not what I wanted. I wanted my husband back. And to be honest, him going through this whole recovery process, I know it's hard in the really dark moments to see the benefits of it. But I would say that yes, in those dark moments, I'm like, where did my husband go? But I would say that I actually didn't get my husband back. I got a better version of him back. And he's still not done with his recovery. So, he still has OCD. He still deals with the anxiety. But the person I'm seeing him become is a better version of himself. And I don't know if that helps or not with whatever it is that you might be feeling right now. Um, but there is, if they can get to the point where they commit to their recovery, because not everybody can, and again, I wish I could say that that's not the case, but it really just comes down to the person. But I would say for us, there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel with regards to having gone through OCD recovery, because he is a better version of himself. Even with the OCD right now, I would still say that who he is and how he is right now is still a better version of himself than who he was even before this. And that's not to say that he was not a good person before this, because he was, and there's a reason I married him. I don't even know where I'm going with this, but just know if they can commit to it, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. But also understand you might go through ups and downs for a long time with regards to this. Again, I'm very lucky that it was just the better part of a year for us that happened. So don't be surprised if they do get to that point where they just kind of are like, I'm committing to recovery and that's it. If they can do that, perfect. That's awesome. But also understand that there's a good chance that they might ride that roller coaster for a little while. And Nick still has bad days. I would say that majority of days are better for him. And obviously better than before. But he still has rough days. He still has bad days. And the hard part for me is I am an empath. I literally was waking up mornings when this first started, and he wouldn't even be awake yet, and I would know how that day was going to go because I felt his anxiety. And then I would go outside and I would walk the dog, and I would not feel his anxiety anymore. And I would come back in and it would hit me again. I have no idea how to explain that. It sounds pretty irrational, but I'm an empath to the nth degree, and particularly with people that I am very close with, I pick up on their emotions very, very easily, and I take on their emotions as if they are my own. And if that's you, I get it. It's really, really hard because you'll be feeling anxiety that you're like, I don't know why I'm anxious, but I am. If you're having a hard time distinguishing if it's your anxiety or not, maybe just distance yourself for like 20 minutes and see if your anxiety goes away, because that might be your cue, like, this is not my anxiety. And it's not my role to take on that anxiety. Sometimes I literally had to sit there and say, this is not my anxiety. It is not for me to take on. And I just had to repeat that over and over again to myself, and it helped. But again, you might go through cycles of that, and it might make it seriously uncomfortable for somebody like me who is an empath, that they're having good days and you're like, finally I can breathe, and then they have a bout of bad days again, and you come back to that. So I would say that it's important for you to learn to recognize that it's not your emotion to take on, but again, it's not a quick fix. So you're going to have to be patient through those days where they're having a really hard time. And I talked about a rebound effect with Nick in my last video, where he would stop playing video games and it was like a rebound. His anxiety would shoot up. It was almost the same with me. He would have a bout of good days and then he would have bad days again. And it was like a rebound effect for me, and it was very frustrating. But if you can learn your own ways to cope with that in a healthy way, not the wine that I was drinking, if you can learn your own ways to cope with that, you're going to be very helpful in a supportive role for them, because they probably need somebody to lean on a little bit sometimes. Um, but again, it's not your job to get them through it. Sometimes they just need an ear for somebody to listen to. Just try not to get into the reassurance cycle, which I'm going to talk about in my next video. So, yeah, just take care of yourself. Understand that it's not linear. Their recovery is not going to be linear for most people, anyways. Understand that you're probably going to go on a roller coaster for a while. As long as they commit to the recovery, there is probably going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. So if you guys have any comments, concerns, questions about the roller coaster that I have experience with, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'm more than happy to answer them. I am not a mental health practitioner by any means, but I can speak to you about my experience on that roller coaster with Nick. It's not a quick fix. Bear that in mind. Take a deep breath and prepare yourself for a potential roller coaster ride, because that's what we went through. But have a good day, guys. Again, drop any comments, questions in the notes below. Have a good day.